Hi, this is FIFO, and today I'll be talking about the authorization flags in the Stellar network. What are the authorization flags? The Stellar network has a series of control mechanisms that you can enable at any time for your asset, and these are called authorization flags. The authorization flags are readily available. The only thing you need to do is to execute an operation called set options. Within this operation, you can enable one or multiple of these flags, and once the flag is enabled, all of the assets controlled by that account will be affected by this control mechanism. This is used by a lot of issuing entities to control the asset, to define who can interact with my asset and in which way. So as we combine the different flags in different ways, we create what we call a permissioning profile for that asset. Decentralized markets and control. Very cool thing about the control mechanisms is that they're native to the network. You don't need to code or implement a smart contract, they're ready to use. And as a consequence, they're also integrated with all of the native tools and the native functionalities in the Stellar network. If an account that interacts with your asset wants to make use of one of the tools, they need to ensure they are following the rules that are set for the asset. A great example are the decentralized markets. Stellar has two great tools for decentralized markets. At one side, you have a decentralized exchange, which is the Stellar DEX, and on the other side, you have the AMMs, the automated market makers. So, if an account wants to invest in an AMM or wants to perform a trade in any of these markets using your asset, they need to make sure that they are following the rules that are set for this asset, they are following the control mechanisms, otherwise the network will simply reject their transaction. It's not going to happen. Authorization required. The first control mechanism that we'll talk about is the authorization required flag. It works in a very simple way. Once it's enabled, any account that wants to interact with the asset needs to be approved by the issuing entity, and the only account that can do that is the issuing account. It could provide the authorization in two ways. It could fully authorize the new account to trade, receive, send units of the asset, or they could partially authorize this account, which is used in some more complex and advanced use cases that we'll cover in future videos. The most common use case is the KYC, the Know Your Customer workflow, in which a user has to submit some documentation, they undergo some verification to prove their identity, and once that we know who's behind the account, who's controlling that account, and we feel confident about that, then we authorize them to interact with our asset. Authorization revocable. The authorization revocable works in the opposite way of the authorization required. It allows me as an asset issuer to remove the authorization of an existing account. So I can select any account that already interacts with my asset and I can revoke their authorization. What happens is, if they hold any balance of my asset, this balance is frozen in place. So they cannot send any units and they cannot receive any units. They cannot also trade with the markets or anything like that. This is generally used in regulatory measures and use cases like this, in which you need to investigate further, you need to look into an account, see if the person is doing any malicious activity, and the only way the account can go back to operating normally is if the asset issuer reauthorizes that account in the same way they would authorize an account with the authorization required. Clawback enabled. The clawback enabled flag and the clawback functionality are a step further into the permission side of the spectrum. To enable it, you need also to enable the revocable flag, and once it's in place, it allows the asset issuers to select a target account that holds some balance of their tokens, and it allows the asset issuer to claw back a portion of that balance, basically burning this from the supply. So it's removing circulating supply direct from the wallet. Well, FIFO, why would I use that? This is generally implemented in more advanced use cases. For example, let's say I identified an account that has been compromised. Some hackers got a hold of the tokens in that account. I could use this functionality to claw back the stolen tokens and remove from circulation. A different use case could be a non-custodial solution. Let's say an user has lost the private keys to an account and the tokens are lost in that lost account. Well, the asset issuer could do a workflow to verify the identity of the person, and after doing that, they could claw back the lost tokens. They could then reissue that same amount and send to a new account, basically retrieving the tokens that were lost. Well, the important piece is that when using this functionality, make sure that you are planning things ahead of time and that you are executing it in a safe manner. With a good architecture, you could use this flag to really leverage very robust use cases. What about the immutable? Well, the authorization immutable flag works a bit differently than the other flags. Once it's enabled, it freezes all of the configuration flags in place, so you know for sure that the asset issuer cannot change the asset profile anymore. So if I don't have the authorization required, I don't have the authorization revocable, and I don't have the clawback while I enable the authorization immutable, I won't be able to enable those flags anymore. So the users know that my asset won't be controlled in the future. And that's a good way of providing confidence about the profile that you created for your asset. So users can know for sure if their account could have the authorization revoked or not, if the tokens could be clawbacked or not. Well, those were the topics we had for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or topics to suggest, just leave it in the comments and I see you next time.